I would like to say one more thing. I would like to tell Mr. Brian Davis to shut his mouth and leave Brett Sheridan alone. Thank you.
Wow. This is breaking. So not only does Arnold Schwarzenegger listen to our little show here, he also listens to After Schmoe, calling out Brian Davis over there. So interesting beef between those guys.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Brian David Show. I'm Kristian Harloff, and it is the Schmoes Know Show. Very excited to see everybody here today.
Recorded via a lousy Skype connection in Orlando and Orange County, it's After Schmoe, the official Schmoes Know After Show. I'm Ken Apsock, and apparently I'm contractually obligated to introduce your After Schmoe hosts, Mr. Brian Davids and Aaron Turner.
Welcome to After Schmoe, the official Schmoes Know After Show. I'm your host, Brian Davids, and I'm once again joined by Aaron Turner. This is the show where we discuss all things Schmoes Know, including the Schmoes Know Show and the Movie Trivia Schmoedown. And for good measure, we'll even throw in a little Collider video. Aaron, before we get started, I want to congratulate Elena Marie 10, the winner of this week's Arrival iTunes giveaway. Elena wrote a great comment in YouTube and won the drawing. Folks, remember to follow at After Schmoe for each week's giveaway, as well as me, Brian Davids, at BDF331, and my co-host Aaron Turner at AT Titanium. Let's kick things off with the Teen Movie Trivia Schmoedown, as Tuff Beats hopes to rebound from a tough beat, the James Horner debacle, as they square off against a rookie team known as the Nerds Watch. For whatever reason, I keep wanting to say the Nerd Swatch, so if I say that by mistake, it is not meant to be an insult or any disrespect.
Are you talking about the error in the pregame graphic?
Oh, did it say the Nerd Swatch by accident?
I believe it said the Nerds Wattage. It wasn't quite the Nerds Watch, but it has been amended since.
Oh, that's right. They put the C before the T on accident. But no, I'm referring to their pre-match background, as the S in Nerds was rather close to the W in Watch. And I think Rachel and Ken were blocking some of the letters, so all I could see was Swatch. And I've had that visual in my head, thus my brain keeps trying to say Swatch by mistake. Anyway, shifting gears, we forgot to talk about this last week, as they're doing introductions with an effect that is similar to Sunday Night Football, where it's a moving display on loop. Each competitor can pose or make a face instead of just having a static image, so yet another improvement to the production value.
Yeah, it is nice to have a moving background. It's very, like you said, it's very Monday Night Football, very Monday Night Raw-ish to have just a little bit different pizzazz to it. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Ken was born for these sort of intros, as he's got charisma to spare, but Rachel, in her debut, she was likely nervous beyond belief, and she probably just wanted to get to the match versus worrying about her intro presentation.
I did speak to Rachel after her match via message, and she did say she was a little nervous under those lights. Everything changes when you're under the lights.
Ain't that the truth? Now, Ken's garb was hilarious, as he had all sorts of con passes around his neck. I also thought he was wearing a True Blood hat at first, but it was later revealed as Fire in Blood, which is a Game of Thrones reference. I think it's Season 1, Episode 10, if I'm not mistaken. However, I choose to believe he was showing RLM that Collider's nerd level isn't as extreme as other channels.
Ken looked like he had the Mr. T of nerd lanyards going on. I dug it.
There you go. I wonder if those were all his, or if he grabbed them from around the office.
Or did he take them from Scott Mantz's office? Because you know that guy has a ton of them.
It's possible. However, all the Collidarians are frequent con visitors, whether it's Comic-Con, WonderCon, Kamikaze-Con, Saudi Arabia Con, WizardCon. I can't keep track of all the cons, but nice touch either way in what is Ken's official Schmoedown debut at Collider. Of course, the Star Wars match was an exhibition.
You are 100% correct.
Now tell me about the adversity that Tuff Beats faced in this match.
Looked like there might have been a little bit of a scheduling issue to where Tuff Beats were pushed to the forefront a little bit before they were ready with a shorter notice. So I don't know if that had something to do with the play and they alluded to it. Sam Levine and his partner Jay Washington were unable to make the date for some reason, so Tuff Beats were there as a fill-in.
Aaron, my sources told me that Sam Levine was busy shooting the Freaks and Geeks reunion special, and just when he was about to leave for the Schmoedown, James Franco surprised everyone with a Carvel ice cream cake, so I understand his need to reschedule.
Can you just repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
And despite being a last-minute replacement, Tuff Beats had a little rap for us. Perry dropped the following line: "All you haters who bitch about the rap, fuck you, we're having fun. Oh no, P. Nimmy just dropped an F-bomb." So very nice, responding to the commenters in ways that no one else can. So what'd you think of this rap?
I agreed with a guy in the YouTube comment section who said Perry's rap alone deserves 7,000 likes. I was right there with him. I thought so as well.
Or at least a couple bonus points on their matches total.
For sure, at least 2 or 3 more bonus points.
I know it'll never happen, but just imagine if they rewarded an extra point to whomever had the better intro between the two teams or the two opponents. People would be going out of their way to come up with something creative and stylish just to get that extra point. Now, Aaron, you know I'm big on recognizing tells during the week as to who won each Schmoedown match. I recently said that Roca won the title match based on a smile he had during the Schmoes Know Show prior to his title victory against Merle. Well, on Tuesday's Movie Talk, Perry let out an audible sigh, and that told me the outcome of this match. Did you happen to catch this?
Fortunately for me, I didn't see it, so...
I like how you paused knowing that the "for me" was coming.
Of course.
To be fair, I know I got the last 2 tells correct, but I haven't always been right. I'd say I'm batting .650 overall.
And you're also keeping a closer eye on it than most people as well.
Yeah, because I do this show, I'm hyper-focused on every little detail, and since this show releases after the Schmoedown, it's not like I'm spoiling the outcomes for people anyway. I just gotta say that I love Tuff Beats Behind the Curtains walkout. It added a ton of energy and electricity to these introductions, and I think if you put some curtains up in that little alleyway, that you can make these walkouts even more dynamic, especially with that new interior shot that Ken and Rachel had in front of the brick wall of fame. So, did you get the same vibe from this intro as I did?
It was something different. I kind of enjoyed Rachel's and Ken's better. It was just slightly behind the curtain. I don't think the Collider studio, no offense, is big enough for that kind of entrance. So when you see Jonathan walking around the studio and you see the set, it's kind of like, well, what? Well, I've already seen what they're just going to walk out. So there's no showmanship, no flair, no costume. So I was kind of on the opposite side. I didn't care for their entrance, but I did like Rachel's and Ken's a little bit better.
Keep in mind, my point was contingent on them adding curtains or a partition to make that alleyway part of the walkout. I mean, imagine if they began the walkout with the cameraman following each competitor down that alleyway, all the Tuff Beats, as a way to build up the energy from the competitor's point of view, and then we switch to the shot that Rachel and Ken had in front of the brick wall of fame. Then we move to the primary shot that we're used to seeing as they come out of the curtains. That way it becomes rather dynamic versus being static. Of course, all of this would be timed perfectly with the music choice and Kristian's introduction.
Well, if they do that, if they kind of close it off like you're saying, that's a little bit better. But to have it wide open with the set being right there, it looks weird. It looked weird. Sometimes I think you want to keep the genie in the bottle too. Let's not show too much. Let's keep the genie in the bottle.
I didn't know you were Team Christina, Aaron.
Oh, wow. Okay.
People don't think I'm Team Brittany just because I played off of Aaron's reference. So do you think the chairman is trying to drive me insane when he gives extra emphasis on the JTE rule, aka the Josh McCouga rule?
No, I don't think so. I think he just wants to quell everybody that keeps calling it the McCouga rule. There seems to be quite a large contingent that want to change it to the McCouga rule, so he's just trying to have a little fun at their expense.
Can you hear me patting myself on the back?
It is very loud, but I can deal with it.
I mean, Kristian says I drive him crazy, and that's kind of by design. But I mean, this is proof, though, that people associate the repeat request with Josh McCouga. I'm not the only one.
No, like I said, there's a large contingent of people that want the name changed.
I mean, I would like to assume that they're all After Schmoe fans or Schmoeville fans that have been hearing me say this for 7 months, but I'm not going to go that far. So I think that is ultimate proof that it should be the Makuga rule.
We'll just have to check out the petition on change.org. It's up there.
We've talked a lot about the whiteboard banter during round ones of late and how Ellis's whiteboard banter was a little too loud compared to the golf voices of Harloff and Knapsack. Well, what do you know, Aaron? Ellis lowered his voice's volume by a couple decibels for this match.
I did notice it. It was a little bit quieter. It was a lower register than Ellis is used to, so I like that a lot. Getting too loud kind of distracts from the game, so I see what you're saying there. Kristian and Ken do have it down the best, and I feel like Ellis is getting there.
Look, I love listening to Mark Ellis crack jokes and pound Coors Lights just as much as the next guy, but ultimately the competitors must be able to focus. I do love, though, that our influence continues to rub off on this league, and while we've been the driving force behind many of these positive changes, I still view the Schmoedown as the People's League. Plenty of communal feedback has led to various changes the last year. There are plenty of platforms, plenty of channels that pretend to listen to their fans when you know they really don't.
Let me ask you this. In round one, would you be okay? Because sometimes there's a lull when they are writing down a question and they finish the answer, and then Ellis and Kristian will talk to fill up that time. But sometimes they're done way early. Would you be okay with them maybe putting the boards down and then they're all finished and they just go ahead instead of waiting the 15 seconds to kind of quell some of that dead air?
I like what you're saying. You could cut it out, but then people would have conspiracy theories for days. So since people have their whiteboards in the air to start each question, once they put them down, that could be the signal to the announcers that they can then move forward without waiting.
It's just kind of awkward when they're done writing the answer. It's something real short and everybody gets it right away. And then we have to wait for 10 seconds of them just sitting there. It's kind of weird.
Do you like the idea of putting the whiteboards down as a signal to the announcers that they can move forward without waiting?
Yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Well, as far as the match, I'm still in shock that Ken was the only one to name Walter Sobchak from Lebowski. And given how much time we spent criticizing Edge of Tomorrow's title, I'm surprised people tried to get cute with the home release's title, Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow.
It's not Live, Die, Repeat. It's not All You Need Is Kill. It's Edge of Tomorrow. There's no challenge needed.
God, I wish they stuck with the original title of All You Need Is Kill. That sounds so awesome every time I hear it. But if someone had challenged that Live, Die, Repeat was acceptable given the home release, do you think the judges would have ruled in their favor?
I think they would have kept it as is. I don't think they would have overturned it.
Me too. Well, at the end of round one, it was 10-7 Nerds Watch. Well, in round two, Nerds Watch landed Oscars, one of Rachel Cushing's strongest categories. Kristian then set expectations pretty high for her, which caused her to give kind of a look of dread. I think it can sometimes be a disadvantage to be told how great you are in one category, especially in your first match.
She was giving it the John Roca approach. She knows the category very well, but she played it off as, maybe I don't know.
If I'm ever lucky enough to play, I don't want my strengths or weaknesses being revealed before my first match. I want people to figure those out over time. That way I can surprise some people and not have the pressure of expectations. And separately, as far as Rachel's nickname, the Crusher, part of me hoped that she would go with the Jerry Maguire-inspired Cush-Slash, but that's just me.
I think the Crusher works a little bit better for my taste, but I respect your opinion.
It's like Whiplash, only it's Cush-Slash, and it relates to a movie, but it's kind of a deep reference that not everybody would get, and based on her performance in this match, the Crusher is certainly apropos. So at the end of their round two turn, Rachel blew the match open. The score was 20-8. Ken delivered in round one. Rachel dominated in round two, and this is one of the more dominant rounds that I can remember. I don't know if that holds up statistically, but Rachel was absolutely on fire.
It was that perfect balance. She and Ken in the first round answered the same amount of questions right. Then Rachel took her strength in round two. It was really good team play.
Well, just when it looked like things were over for Tuff Beats, they got Spinner's Choice. Perry took Horror, of course, and they climbed back in this thing as they were only down 4 going into round 3. Do you have any thoughts on their turn?
Not really. I was kind of surprised that Perry didn't get the Dolores Claiborne question right away. It's a little obscure. It's a little obscure to be in Stephen King's repertoire. But for Kathy Bates, when they said other than Misery, it should have been kind of a dead giveaway. But I don't blame her. I don't blame her for that one. That's the only question where I was like, she probably could have got that one.
Well, as far as round 3, we've talked a lot about how there wasn't much explanation for why 1-pointers were changed to 2-pointers, but we did see Kristian post on Twitter last week that it raises the stakes.
You could also up the stakes by making the chairs electrified. When you answer a wrong question, you could just buzz somebody if you wanted to. So I don't know about upping the stakes, but I digress.
They profiled 4DX Theaters on the Schmoes Know Show this week. What if they designed a desk and chair system for the Schmoedown that punishes and rewards competitors based on their right or wrong answers? If they're right, they get mist blown in their face since it's so damn hot in that studio, something Natasha Alexis _ can attest to. This also ups the stakes as it conditions people to be right more and wrong less.
Yeah, not a bad idea at all.
Well, the story of this match, besides the arrival of Rachel Cushing, was Tuff Beats 3-pointer. Certainly the Vulture was bound to overcome his James Horner nightmares by answering Russell Crowe's name in Gladiator, right?
It was not to be on this day.
I still can't believe it.
It's one of the most iconic lines, I think, in movie history. So to not get it, I could probably recite the line for you, paraphrasing. I think I was with a lot of people, and I know he's probably beating himself up about it, but that as an answer to me is unexcusable. Come on.
I know we give people a lot of leeway when it comes to the lights, but Voitko has been on the big stage enough by now to overcome this. And given our demographic, there's just no reason this shouldn't be answered. The name became a part of pop culture back then. I had friends who named their pets Maximus. People named their screen names after Maximus. There's just no excuse.
I have a cousin that named his son Maximus after Maximus Decimus Meridius from Gladiator.
I feel bad for Vulture because whenever he watches these movies in the future, be it Braveheart or Gladiator, he's going to have post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a guy who entered the league around the same time as The Godfather, The Beast, The Android. I wanted to send him straight to singles after that first team match. Despite all this, I'm not ready to throw in the towel quite yet on Vulture, but the real Jonathan Voitko needs to show up soon.
Who is the real Vulture? Are we going to see him do something like this in the next team match? Are we going to see him shine in singles on his own? I'm not sure, but I'm with you. I'm not throwing in the towel yet. I'm still hanging on to what the Vulture's got going on.
Like I said on the Schmoedown Rundown, there are competitors in every sport or competition that have all the ability, all the knowledge, all the skill set, but for whatever reason, they can't seem to access it on the big stage. Do you think that could be the case with Vulture?
It's a good possibility.
Now tell me about the Nerds Watch post-interview. Who did Ken declare war on?
He declared war on Team Patriots and more importantly, JTE, which I think at this point, everybody's declaring war on JTE in this league.
But we are here for you, Patriots. You are braggarts, you are bodacious, you are ostentatious, you are cocky. And in your heart, you hear the footsteps of the Nerds Watch. Because I've been watching you from afar, and you do not bring a class to your victories. You bring the knowledge. But we are here to teach you a life lesson. We are your vengeance coming to you.
Well, I love the fact that Ken has devoted his Schmoedown return to taking down JTE. I say JTE, not the Patriots, since my main man, Jeff Snyder, has always been gracious and generous. Jete continues to disrespect me despite my early belief in his Schmoedown ability long before he even believed in himself. I've even defended JTE when he's been shamed unfairly, such as the Makuga incident recently. It seems like a few of the former interns have forgotten to pay it forward like someone once did for them. Kristian, Ken, Mark, Makuga, and Riley never forgot this lesson, and they're reaping the rewards to this day, especially Ken, who just paid it forward to an unknown schmoesknow.com writer via the Schmoedown.
Well, he's picked the right partner to do it as of right now, it seems. Rachel looks like a very strong partner going forward.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with Rachel. She knows her stuff. She knows her stuff.
Take a shot.
Somebody joked on Facebook to take a shot whenever someone says a new competitor knows their stuff. I've noticed this for the longest time, and I'm jealous that I didn't make fun of it first. And moving to Tuff Beats post-interview, they reissued their challenge to 6 Degrees. 6 Degrees responded on Miss Movies' channel to say that they'd love to throw down with Tuff Beats. Miss Movies also reminded everyone of her willingness to play Perry in singles. I don't know if both will be scheduled, but I'd love to see both matches.
Looks like that could be a matchup down the road. I would be all about seeing Miss Movies versus Perry. I think it'd be a good matchup.
Because we have so many competitors now, because we have so many great competitors now, it seems inevitable that more doubleheaders should be played on Fridays.
Seems like a natural way of things.
They usually record at least 2 matches at a time, but they always have a ton of people in the audience anyway, so they might as well kill 3 or 4 birds with one 30-pack of stones.
I still think they're recorded live, but okay.
This is why you're Kristian's favorite, as well as the host of the official Schmoes Know Schmoedown Rundown show.
That's right. I know nothing.
I have a couple more Schmoedown items, as Kristian has always done a great job as far as talent recruitment goes, but he's really going out of his way to uncover some more female talent, as recent posts indicate. Michelle Boyd's name was included when it came to the next Intergeekdom match. It may or may not be confirmed, but that alone would be the cherry on my Schmoedown Sunday, but good on Kid Kristian either way. Also, I don't know if you saw this photo or not, but the new belts came in, and Wolves of Steel took a picture with these new belts. I think this is a total smokescreen to get people such as myself off the breakup trail. I still think Clark and Riley's upcoming singles match will mark the end of their partnership.
And as I've said over and over, and I'll say it one more time, when a championship is on the line, there are no teammates.
Or friends.
Only war.
Well, it's been a big week for the Schmoedown already, as Ken Knapsack has discovered yet another gem, someone who could be our best female competitor to date. Welcome, Rachel Cushing. Aaron, are you ready to discuss Schmoes Know Show number 273, Logan spoilers, plus Kong Skull Island preview?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Who's our cast?
This week we have Mark Ellis, Brett Sheridan returns, we have Perry Nemiroff, and Ken Knapsack.
Who's on our couch?
Only Little Evil JTE was on the couch.
I wonder why that is. No one wanted to soak up his evil rays. No one wanted to be in his evil orbit to start the show. Is it bad luck to sit next to him to start the show?
It could have been. I know RB3 had to sit next to him later on, and I know he had finals coming up, so he was probably a little bit nervous.
Well, friend of the show, Brett Sheridan, returned and talked about New Orleans and Mardi Gras. He also reiterated the don't draw attention to it mandate when it comes to our show, even though he is drawing attention to us just by saying that, as well as laughing during our plug. But what was your first impression of his return?
The first thing I actually have a question first off. Do you have to return award screeners?
As someone who's part of the exclusive society of people deemed worthy enough to receive screeners, you do not have to. Most of them are digital these days anyway. That way guys like Brett don't leave years worth of screeners lying around the house.
Okay, because I was wondering how long you had, because he said he had that Social Network screener from 2013?
Social Network came out in 2010.
My goodness. I don't know how you carry around a 60-pound bag of beads. That must have been very difficult. I was glad that they renewed the rivalry about the theme song, him and Cobster. I really enjoyed that.
I'm shocked that we overlooked this several weeks ago when Brett first dissed his segment's music because the jingle was RB3's brainchild. I can't believe Brett would disrespect a young, impressionable mind like RB3 who's still maturing as an adult. I think Brett owes Robert a more meaningful apology, as this public insult could have lasting effects on RB3's self-esteem.
Especially when RB3 just threw his hands up and he's like, come on, man. Like, I worked really hard on that.
And shame on the rest of the cast for not recognizing how upset Robert was when he threw his arms up in the air. Now, Brett's description of his vacation isn't what we expected. We thought he'd be soul-searching, given his recent struggles on the show. Instead, he was partying all day long and could barely make time for a midday siesta.
I'm personally am a fan of naps as well on vacation, so I understood Brett's pain. I am also past my prime of partying, so I understood that as well.
A quick lesson for all you youngsters. If you're gonna drink during the day, make sure to leave yourself some time for a late afternoon nap sock, as the sun can be a killer Kalinowski when it comes to your evening plans. But yeah, I'm very disappointed that Brett did not get any me time.
I hope that's not the case. I hope he did get to relax a little bit, but it sounded like there for a minute that he wasn't enjoying himself.
I still can't believe that Brett does a segment on the Schmoes Know Show that is supposed to catch him up on the movies he missed due to being a family man. At first, it seemed like he lived in a remote area. Perhaps his local movie theater was too inconvenient with young children. Perhaps private school tuition cut into his movie-going budget. But then we found out that he's been receiving SAG screeners for over a decade. Essentially, he had a free Netflix account only for current releases before there was even a Netflix. We should have called this segment Brett Finally Watches the SAG screeners that have been sitting in his mailbox for the last 14 years. Apparently, JTE has anointed himself as the thumbnail guru of YouTube, even though he's mocked endlessly for his. However, he did make a great point about Brett's thumbnail for Brett to the Future, as it looks like a thumbnail you'd use for a Bone Tomahawk review or something. It's certainly too serious for what is supposed to be a lighthearted segment like Brett to the Future.
Like a thumbnail for Schindler's List or something like that. The guy looks in pain.
His thumbnail would have been the perfect thumbnail for his Mardi Gras review. But man, you could tell how rusty Brett was during Brett to the Future, as he kept derailing himself because of the giggles. I think he sees the reactions of everyone around him and he can't help but giggle, so maybe he needs to borrow Roka's sleep mask.
I do concur with that, especially the last one before he left, I believe was Hell or High Water. He was very sharp on that one, had a lot of good points. He had some good points in this, but like you said, he kept getting derailed by the laughter, and he just couldn't bring it back there for a while.
Mark Ellis even threatened to call Ace from the bullpen, as Brett couldn't get it together. And then Brett brought up Ken's comment from a prior episode about Ace's segment being the best episode of Brett to the Future yet. So clearly Brett is listening carefully to everything said about him during his vacations.
He's just got to realize that it's never a bad thing to keep an ace up your sleeve.
Yeah, Mark and Kristian are famous for always having a plan B. Just ask Shoesy Pants.
I would really like to see Brett do a behind the scenes or a photo of just the stack of screeners that he has at home, because you know it's gigantic.
And the crazy thing is, he's been paying his SAG dues every year to enjoy this perk. Yeah, he gets great health insurance, but still.
Do you get 10% off at Qdoba when you are in the SAG?
Wow, that's an interesting comment to make, Aaron, as you just brought this after show full circle. I wonder why you do that. I'm sure we'll find out soon. Aaron, what is your final judgment on this week's Brett to the Future?
Despite all of the laughter and the interruptions that he had doing his segment, I thought he came to a nice conclusion on the film. It was an easy joke, but it was funny when he said, starring Armie Hammer and Armie Hammer. I thought that was very funny. I like that.
Like Brett, I've always hated Facebook, mainly from a usability standpoint, but I like that Facebook is redeemed by some of the great groups that we're all a part of, as well as a great film that includes that amazing Reznor and Ross piano line. It also taught us how to name our brands, even though the movie title does not follow its own advice.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. That's why this show is not called The After Schmoe, because of Justin Timberlake.
Apparently, Aaron Sorkin did not take a hint from Justin Timberlake's Sean Parker on how to name his own movie, despite writing that very advice for the character to offer Jesse Eisenberg's Mark Zuckerberg. Jumping back for a second, they were talking about JTE's Belko experiment thumbnails that he did with his girlfriend and how angry they both looked. Do you ever wonder how long our favorite YouTubers spend on crafting the perfect thumbnail?
I wonder if it's a Stanley Kubrick style process where there's just hundreds of takes trying to get this photo right.
Given all the attention that JTE gets for his thumbnails, I wouldn't be surprised. Also, Perry totally spoiled the cast of the second episode of Collider Unboxing as she referenced a $750 toy that she worked with that day. I guess Tiffany Smith has already been recast?
Must not have been a DC-related item.
Oh, come on. She had no problem unboxing the alien in the pilot episode. And I've said many times, there's nothing wrong with Tiffany being gainfully employed and supporting your employer, but perhaps she was on the set of Justice League's reshoots and was learning a few tricks. Yes, folks, that was an intentional full circle moment. I hate to give Jete any credit right now, but I would totally watch a show where he tours the country with Tom Dagnino, visiting famous locations from Sly Stallone's filmography.
The fact that Ken Knapsack could come up with a show or a segment that quick and already have a name for it just speaks to the true legend of Ken Knapsack.
The same Ken Knapsack who thinks that the Studio Fly is more organized than Brett, and I agree.
Can you just repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, let's talk a little of the news since you brought up Ken. Well, Ken was very upset about Luke's first Last Jedi words being tweeted to him, and he's absolutely right to feel this way. We cannot assume that everyone wants to know everything. Fortunately for Ken and the rest of us, there was a report that dropped the next morning, and to sum it all up, it's safe to say we're no longer spoiled. And I just want to commend myself for having the wherewithal and the integrity to tweet my boss, Kristian Harloff, knowing full well that Movie Talk's notes wouldn't be updated in time. I couldn't let my mentor run with old news that would lead to a day's worth of corrections from fanboys on Twitter.
So some would have declared those early reports as false news.
False news indeed. So folks, if you go back and watch Thursday's Movie Talk, you can see the exact moment that Kristian Harloff receives my DM and then updates the story. Now some people have been saying, Brian, why does he never credit you on Collider? And what I tell those people is that we have a Jim Gordon and Batman type relationship. Kristian once said to me, I never credit you on Collider, to which I replied, and you'll never have to. So you really can't ask for a better display of synergy between SK+, Schmoes Know, and Collider Video. Aaron, can you give me a round of applause, please?
Well done.
Speaking of well done, Ken always does a great job writing jokes for the news, but he almost always works in some meaningful social commentary as he paid tribute to International Women's Day and how women are already pushing down the gates of Hollywood and removing the old guard.
Also, another great line when talking about the Jurassic World photo that got released when he said it was a girl in a room of fossils, which is basically like every casting room in Hollywood. Ken, once again, on fire with the news.
Shifting gears, I absolutely love that they've added the composer details during the breaks.
Yeah, just a little thing, kind of like the credits they've added at the end, just a little touch. I like it.
Well, let's talk about T from Cinefix. I've never heard of Cinefix, and yet they have 2.2 million subscribers. Do you know about this channel?
I do not know about this channel, but kick ass that you have 2.2 million. That's great.
I've said before that I'm a YouTube monogamist. I'm so deep in the Schmoelider universe that I have no idea what's going on with the rest of YouTube, and Cinefix is a perfect example of my ignorance. So what'd you think of T? Tell me your thoughts on T.
I thought T brought the wood. I thought she gave some great insight. She wasn't just one of these people that sat there during the Logan discussion and was like, yeah, it's one of the greatest films of all time. She was very assertive in her response. She said, yes, it's a great film. It's a great, noir Western style film, but I'm getting a little superhero fatigue. I appreciated the honesty in her review.
I have to correct you just a little bit. While she did say that she's been suffering from superhero fatigue, she said that she's still able to enjoy good movies that just so happen to have superheroes in them, such as The Dark Knight and now Logan. However, I was buying everything T was selling. She didn't drag her points out for too long. She didn't need 4 paragraphs to make a point, unlike myself. Of course, I love seeing diversity on the show, but I think she's a great fit regardless of that aspect, so I hope she enjoyed herself enough to come back.
I hope so. I'd love to see her again.
And to follow up our conversation last week about the Logan preview being too long, I like that they shortened the Kong Skull Island preview to about 5 or 6 minutes.
I'll agree with you on that point that it was nice to see it a little bit shorter, but I'm going to go back to what you said last week. Even when people that have seen the film talk about it, you kind of get a sense of what to expect from Kong Skull Island. I know that after listening to these reviews that it's good, not great. I can already tell that. So now my expectations have been tailored as such. Is that a good or bad thing? I don't know.
When I reference expectations, it's more to do with the structure versus how good the film is overall. Marvel releases their films with so much time to spare that the media has nothing but time to cover these films and set expectations as far as there are 4 set pieces. The first one's pretty good, the third one's amazing, and the fourth one, oh my god, it's so emotional. But by and large, if you can have low expectations or no expectations, you're doing yourself a favor like you did when you saw Arrival and Hell or High Water. We barely knew anything about those films until the moment we sat down to watch them. Imagine if they were discussed with the same fanfare as Civil War or Suicide Squad. I guarantee we wouldn't enjoy them as much because we'd have expectations. As far as their Logan discussion, we can't really talk about any specifics, but do you have any broad takeaways?
I actually want to give a shout out to Ace on this one, because Ace kind of came in a little bit differently than everybody, where I felt like everybody was giving it the, overwhelming hype, and I feel like Ace was a little more grounded with it. I think he and I were about on the same level of liking the film. So I just want to shout out Ace for coming in there.
Strangely enough, the people who loved Logan more than Ace mostly agreed that Donald Pierce's motivation could have been fleshed out more, and yet Ace had nothing but praise for the character, despite liking the film less than most people. And while I liked the film more than Ace, I would agree with him on Donald Pierce, as he explicitly stated what he wanted in his very first scene. By the way, Ace was hilarious when he was talking about being from Arizona and relating to certain aspects of this film.
Very much so.
And for their closing segment, the show welcomed another guest named Chris Hartwell for their Kong preview, as well as Schmoe's Choice. I know Chris a little bit, so I had kind of a Kevin Bacon type moment once I saw him pop up on screen. Oddly enough, the last 4 places I've made content for or with Chris has arrived, I'd say a year or so after me to contribute as well. Unfortunately, and to no fault of Chris, I thought T overshadowed him a bit. She was just that good.
Yeah, I thought Chris did fine for a first timer on the show. He didn't do too bad at all. I'm interested in his segment. I think that's something that is different than a lot of movie reviewers or movie discussion in the space, talking about films that did not get their due. I think that could be a very interesting topic.
See, I wouldn't say the segment is about films that didn't get their due. The last Indiana Jones film got its due, even if it didn't deserve such due, including the $800 million it almost made. I think he's trying to find the silver linings in films that YouTubers generally dislike, whether it's the prequels, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Jackson's King Kong. The thing is, many of the clips in the promo he brought consist of legendary filmmakers' worst films. Of course there are masterstrokes in Spielberg's worst Indiana Jones film, George Lucas's prequels, Peter Jackson's King Kong, M. Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water, Ron Howard's Grinch movie, or even the worst Pixar film. The bigger challenge, I think, is whether films like The Last Stand, Passengers, or Fant Four Stick have any redeeming qualities whatsoever. However, I do appreciate the attempt to be more positive about films, as the internet, especially YouTube, is known for mocking films.
Right. I took it a little bit differently as maybe a movie that the first movie that came to mind in my head was Interstellar, because I feel like people are half and half on Interstellar and never gave it the full opportunity that it deserved to absorb the film. That's what I took that his segments were going to be.
I know I keep sounding like a contrarian, but I think Interstellar has gotten its due. The problem was people had ridiculous expectations for it, since it was Nolan's first film post-Dark Knight trilogy. McConaughey and Hathaway had just won Oscars. It's just one of those films that everybody should see twice. Even Jeremy and Kristian came around on it in their second viewing. It was fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, it was profitable. Yeah, it's not as beloved as Nolan's other films, but even the negative reviews had glowing things to say about it, such as how ambitious it was. I'm only judging the dregs that were shown in the highlight reel, your Last Airbender in the Waters, your Kingdom of the Phantom Menaces, and I just don't think you can put Interstellar alongside those films.
I see what you're saying. I'll just have to watch the series and see where it goes.
I do like your idea, though, of reviewing films upon a second or third viewing once expectations are long gone. I would have loved to watch Jeremy and Kristian review Interstellar upon their second viewings. Most of the non-spoiler and spoiler discussions are right after our collidarians have seen the film, so they don't really have time to digest the film, something a second viewing would allow. This is exactly what plagued Interstellar, and that's why Jeremy doesn't have the quick trigger he used to have. Let's talk about Schmoes Choice.
Let's do it.
Every week, Ellis gives JT a hard time about explaining the rules. How do you play the game again? That's always what he asks, because he never gets a satisfying explanation from JTE.
Can you just repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, during his explanation of Schmoes Choice, JTE provided yet another timeless soundbite, as he said you pick one film to live on in the annals of cinema history. Obviously, he meant annals of cinema history.
For sure, and I believe he even changed it when he said annals, and then he tried to say annals again, but he ended up saying annuals. So take for that what you will.
This is yet another example of why I do the mispronunciation of the week so that JTE doesn't cost himself in the Schmoedown by way of his biggest weakness. Eventually, Ken resumed his banter from Tuesday's Schmoedown as he restated that he's coming for JTE and that JTE's biggest fear is being back in a slump. JTE tried to demean Rachel Cushing's effort as being a one-category wonder, which is total BS because if you know the Oscars, chances are you know a few other things too. JTE then tried to mic drop the argument by saying, "Here's an excuse, I have a championship belt," and Copster, much to his credit, quickly replied, "It's from Target."
I can confirm that belt is definitely not from Target. It is a replica championship. It is definitely not cheap, and it's not from Target. Just want to clarify that. But when you have the belt, you kind of have all the room to talk. So until Ken and Rachel get to that level, unfortunately, they're just going to have to deal with the barrage of JTE.
Historically, whenever the Schmoes have played Schmoes Choice, so do we on this show. So without much explanation, Manchester by the Sea or Room?
I picked Room. I just feel like I can't watch Manchester by the Sea again. It's too depressing.
People say that, and I always remind them that there's a great deal of humor in Manchester, more than I expected. And to be fair, both films are rather depressing, but I'd probably protect Room from being erased from the annals of history. That being said, I love Manchester. Both films have two performances that blew me away. Also, JTE said that Manchester ends without any hope, and I vehemently disagree with that per the last scene. Hell or High Water or The Big Short?
While I respect both of these films for what they've done in the script writing and all of that good stuff, I took Hell or High Water over The Big Short because The Big Short is a movie that when I watch it, it just makes me so angry that I don't want to watch it anymore. And if that's erased from history and I never have to see it again, I'm fine with it. And I would watch Hell or High Water all day long.
JTE was absolutely right when he said that this year's Best Picture nominees are analogs to a lot of last year's nominees, including The Big Short and Hell or High Water, as both cover the injustices committed by our financial institutions at vastly different levels. And while Christian Bale is my favorite actor on the planet, I have to go with Hell or High Water, as Taylor Sheridan's work is clicking with me on every level right now. Add the performances by the triumvirate of Pine, Foster, and Bridges, and you've got a film that's rewatchable until the end of time. Aaron, what don't you want? Moonlight or Spotlight?
This was a tougher one than I thought right offhand. Spotlight, for those of you that haven't seen Spotlight, at the end of the film, when they roll the credits, before they get there, they roll the names of all the victims of the crimes. And I got very emotional because I've unfortunately known people that's happened to.
Oh, God.
And it broke me. So I lost it at the end of Spotlight, but I took Moonlight because I think while Spotlight is very important and brings up a lot of important things that happened in real life, I feel like Moonlight is the film that's going to be remembered across time as not necessarily a game changer, but something so drastically different. And that's why I took Moonlight.
Mahershala Ali's work in Moonlight is my favorite aspect of both films, and when I think back on Spotlight, it's a bit fuzzy as there are very few things that come to mind aside from Mark Ruffalo. For me, Mark Ruffalo steals everything he's in, but more importantly, Barry Jenkins' film will be remembered more in 20 years because it marked a turning point as far as the films that are capable of winning Best Pictures. So I wouldn't want Moonlight erased from history.
And I think you made a great point about Spotlight that I think I factored in as well when you said that you're a little bit hazy on recalling it. I actually had kind of even forgotten it had won Best Picture. I was like, oh, yeah. Rachel McAdams and Michael Keaton and Liev Schreiber, Mark Ruffalo. Yeah, okay, I remember it now. But it took me a minute.
I've heard a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that The Revenant won Best Picture last year. That film had a ton of attention around it, much like La La Land did this year, given the star power in both films. So hopefully Moonlight and Spotlight won't be overshadowed when we look back at this time. Anyway, what do you think of Brett flaking on his buddy Leaf and the Beauty and the Beast skit they had planned?
I'm a little disappointed, but I like it because it keeps adding fuel to this Cobster and Brett rivalry. I like what's developing there. I like how Cobster's getting very angry at Brett, and Brett continues to undermine Cobster. I enjoy it.
And we have to add RB3 to that rivalry. It's kind of a three-way, for lack of a better word. And RB3 looks extra angry in that sketch. He's in costume, he's got a little makeup on, and he's got some intensity, and I think he's thinking about Brett in that moment.
Well, unfortunately, any contest that involves RB3, he's probably going to win the popular vote.
And while I don't know what this Beauty and the Plunger sketch is about, I'm glad that the guys are trying out different types of content, even at the expense of the SK Plus channel. Anything that combines movies with comedy is on brand, if you ask me. Well, it's time for this week's mispronunciation of the week. This was a name that the panel avoided mentioning on Wednesday's Movie Talk, and Aaron, since you're a big genre fan, I have to ask if you're able to pronounce the name of the director behind the French cannibal horror film, Raw.
I'll do my best. I believe it is Julia Ducournau.
Not bad at all, Aaron. Julia Ducournau. Julia Ducournau. Julia Ducournau. Now, Aaron, is this a film that you're looking forward to?
It is a film that I'm very much looking forward to. Not initially, but from what the reviews that I have read from people that I trust that give it a ringing endorsement, I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, this film was a festival darling. It won a bunch of awards at various festivals, including Cannes, including the Toronto Film Festival. And it got a lot of attention because a couple people fainted during its Toronto Film Festival screening. So make no mistake, though, it is supposed to be a great film. And I wanted to give it a little shout this week since they brought it up on Wednesday's Movie Talk. So Julia Ducournau is your mispronunciation of the week. Aaron, let's get to the Movie Trivia Schmoedown singles match for this week. We had William the Beast Bibbiani versus Eliot Mountain Dewberry. Is it the Mountain or just Mountain?
I think it's the mountain, which confuses me because of the Game of Thrones character.
Well, I just confirmed that it is the mountain, so perhaps it's a play on both the Game of Thrones character and, of course, Mountain Dew. Eliot used to be called Quickshot, so I would say this is an upgrade from Quickshot.
I agree 100%.
And I mentioned recently that someday we'll have trivia that centers around the Schmoedown itself, so file Quickshot away. Well, the Beast mentioned in his intro that he called Kristian immediately after his loss to JTE as he wanted to get back in the ring right away. But because of the waiting game involved, it took almost 2 months to materialize. This supports my earlier point about needing more double headers, especially when the Beast and other competitors are often in attendance for everybody else's matches. So I liked how Eliot was trying to get in the Beast's head by calling him a one-hit wonder, even referencing several one-hit wonders such as Eagle Eye Cherry, Crash Test Dummies, Chumbawamba, Deep Blue Something, The Verve Pipe, The Verve, Marcy Playground, The Toadies, Primitive Radio Gods, and Harvey Danger.
I thought that Eliot's promo started off a little slow, like he wasn't sure what he wanted to say. But as it went on, he started to get into a groove, and when he started dropping the one-hit wonders, that's when it really took off. Bibbiani's promo was okay. It never hit another level. It just kind of stayed the same. It was okay. Let's just put it that way.
I can't wait until 5 years from now when there's so much history established between these competitors that they won't have to reach when it comes to promo smack talk. It's not easy to come up with things when these guys have no existing rapport.
Just have a giant litany of smack to pull from in all cases.
I loved the lights out spotlight effect that Eliot's intro had. I said this to you already, but if they combine this effect with the POV shots behind the curtain like Tuff Beats had, plus Ken and Rachel's shot in front of the brick wall of fame, I think you're enhancing the production value significantly more within the little space that they have. So I love that Kristian and company are never satisfied.
I like the spotlights just fine. I feel like we're about maybe 6 steps away from full-blown pyro in the intros. Now, that would be something to see. I don't know if it would cause a fire hazard issue. But yeah, anything that adds to the entrances, which are some of my favorite parts of the show, and you guys should definitely watch and not skip through. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
I've got one suggestion, and that's lasers.
That's not a bad idea at all. Lasers with a smoke machine added to it, that could be something really cool.
Who doesn't love lasers?
Walt's a scientist. Scientists love lasers.
We already talked about introductions on the Schmoedown Rundown, but I just want to reiterate how I wish the Beast had a lifelike JTE head in that bloody box made by Greg Nicotero, a la Danny Trejo's Tortuga. If the Schmoedown smack talk ever reaches that point, my God.
The idea of a JTE head or mask is terrifying. Unless we can get somehow, like you said, Greg Nicotero, perhaps other creature creator Tom Savini to make a head, and we could have a Greg Nicotero, Tom Savini Schmoedown. Just a suggestion. Please no one make a JTE head or mask. That sounds horrifying. The Beast with the candy, it's a great way to endear yourself to the crowd.
As mentioned, I was on the Schmoedown Rundown this past week, and we talked about this a bit already, so I apologize for any overlap, but it'd be unreal if somebody wore a lifelike mask of their opponent during a Schmoedown match. JTE versus JTE would get all the ratings. Round 1 was evenly matched as the Beast led 6-5 by its end. I'm still shocked that nobody got Paul Hogan as Crocodile Dundee. His character became bigger than the films themselves, a la Ernest or Super Dave. And hopefully, in the future, they're allowed to just write the subtitle of a long sequel.
Yeah, they definitely need to do that. Instead of the entire title, just write the subtitle, makes it a lot easier, a lot more streamlined.
Now on to round 2. I mentioned this on Rundown, but it bears repeating. McQueenie made a statement by spinning 70s, keeping it, and dominating it. This is normally a category that most players would avoid. I think the Beast recognized this and wanted to make a similar statement via classics, as he too kept it and crushed it. So the weaknesses of most players are the strengths of these two fine gentlemen. So look out, everybody.
It's all about the knowledge that he has, and we'll get to his post-match interview later about what he said regarding said knowledge. If you're confident enough in a category that you'll take it right away and not veer your eyesight and just answer the questions, because he answered those questions so quickly. It was question, answer, question, answer. It just speaks to the volume of knowledge this guy has.
Eliot spun mixed bag, of course, and it still concerns me that Eliot did not accept mixed bag with the knowledge of how other players have performed in the category. Eliot can be a factor in this league, but he has to do his homework. Even the best, like the Beast, do their homework.
The way that mixed bag works for me, if I'm a competitor and I look at the wheel and I see maybe 3 categories that I'm not strong at, I would probably take mixed bag, because the odds that you get 3 of those 4 questions in your mixed bag is very rare. Plus, you don't want to run the risk of spinning again and getting something you're terrible at, like movie release dates, scores and soundtracks, what have you. That way you don't have to take a possible 4-point hit. You may just lose 1 question out of it, and that's much better. You have a much better chance, in my opinion, using mixed bag than respinning to get something you may not be good at all.
Eliot said in his post-interview that this wheel has less categories. Is that true?
I think there is. I think the smaller wheel had more pie slices. The way that this one is built, they have magnetic slices that could be changed in and out. So it does look like it is a little bit... it's bigger yet smaller, if that makes sense.
Well, Eliot's round 2 was defined by the Robert Duvall open range question. That really defined the match for Eliot, as he was never the same after this.
They gave the question, and it was almost like it had a double answer. It was like, here's the character name, here's the actor's name that played them, and then what's their real name in the movie? It's like, well, what does that even mean? So I was very confused by that question, as Eliot was, it seemed, as well.
If only Robert Duvall knew how much drama he's been causing in the Movie Trivia Schmoedown.
Yeah, he gave Team Patriots the team championships with the We Own the Night question. Robert Duvall, very intricate in the Schmoedown without even knowing it.
Well, round 3 never made it back to the Beast, as Eliot couldn't answer a single question. I think he was completely checked out after round 2's mixed bag debacle.
I'm with you. It just seemed like Eliot was dangling on the hook, and then he just eventually fell off. It didn't seem to me like at any point in round 3 that he had the confidence to overcome the Beast and get back into the game.
Well, the final score was 14-9 Bibbiani, and the final score really doesn't reflect what a beastdown this was. Well, in the post-interviews, the Beast stated that he wants Harloff and Ellis, just like everybody else does, but he also dropped an interesting quote. Aaron, why don't you tell me about that?
He more or less said that he is not one of these people that's a fan that's commenting on movies. He's not a pundit. He is a true film critic that watches these movies very intently, with the intention, obviously, of writing about them for several articles, not necessarily now, but maybe later, maybe a piece down the road. So he is taking away bit by bit by bit, not just looking at the highlights, whether it's good or whether it's not good, to get a fresh or rotten score. He's right there breaking down every single piece of information, and that kind of leans towards more knowledge of the film. The way that he dissects these films, he's taken in much more than somebody that's just kind of looking at it as, well, this was a fun popcorn flick. He's going into it on a much deeper level.
Yeah, I like what William had to say here. He does this for a living. He should know these things. If he didn't know these things, he wouldn't last very long in his chosen profession. Guys like Bibbiani and McQueenie know this information to facilitate their writing, whether it's columns, books, tweets. It's not just for the purpose of a movie trivia contest. But when they do participate in a movie trivia contest, it's like second nature for them. Eliot joked in his post-interview that the Schmoedown needs reform, that there's an Adderall problem. This reminded me of a joke I made recently on this show about PEDs and corked microphones, but he dropped the shtick when it counted to congratulate the Beast. And to follow up a prior discussion, Skaliski noted this week that they do hear the rules off camera before the match. Frank also told us that they do practice spinning the wheel before the match. However, these changes could have been added after our discussion on this show. Well, the Beast is back on track, which is good for business, and hopefully Eliot can do his homework before his next match because he's got potential in this league. And man, I cannot wait for McQueenie and Bibbiani someday. This match just makes me anticipate it even more when you see the Beast dominate the category of classics.
If Bibbiani is unable to get his partner from his podcast, Whitney Seibold, to join him in team play, which has been discussed by them on their show, it hasn't really been outside of that, would you like to see Bibbiani team up with McQueenie and form just a mega super team?
I'd rather see them become legendary rivals. The Boston Celtics, the Miami Heat, they kind of ruin rivalries in many people's minds, and I've never liked that team-up approach. I didn't like it when the Beast joined the Four Horsemen right after his Schmoedown debut, because I wanted him to slay the Outlaw, not befriend him.
If we don't get them as a team consistently, maybe just a one-time team-up, especially if someone like JT just continues to berate the Beast and poke the bear, if you will. Maybe he says, all right, well, I'll just team up with McQueenie and we'll see who wins. Maybe just a one-off.
The possibilities are endless, but let's move to Collider Corner. Unfortunately, we're running short on time, so we can only discuss a couple points this week. Wednesday's Movie Talk celebrated International Women's Day. Aaron, why don't you tell us about this?
We had, for the first time that I can remember in Collider / AMC history of Movie Talk, we have an all-female panel.
I want to say that Amy Rose, Alicia, and Miri did one at Stream a long time ago, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, who's on our panel for this episode?
We had Ashley Mova, we had Natasha Martinez, we had Clark Wolf, we had Wendy Lee, and it was hosted by Perry Nemiroff.
Well, first off, I'm glad they were acknowledging International Women's Day, but technically speaking, Campea was the host as he was sitting in Ashley's chair, and Perry was leading the table as she was sitting in Campea's usual chair.
Can you just repeat the question again? I'm sorry.
Do you think they should have had someone like a Sinead host instead of John?
Should have definitely been an all-female episode. Maybe even had Grace Hancock make her on-camera Movie Talk debut as the host.
Interesting.
I don't know if it was a scheduling issue. Maybe I'll just chalk it up to that. But yeah, it should have been all female. All the way.
Sinead's schedule is a nightmare per my understanding, but I do think a woman should have been hosting in John's place. Make no mistake, I'm appreciative of the fact that they did this, as it was cool to see the opposite dynamic with John sitting in Ashley's seat, but John being there, even in a limited role, took away some of the attention that should have been on the ladies. Furthermore, it shouldn't take a special day like this to justify an all-female panel, but hopefully this gives John the information and the confidence he needed to book a female-led panel on a more frequent basis.
I 100% agree. While I'm a big fan of the all-female panel, I don't know why it took a day, an International Women's Day, a special day, to make it an all-female panel. This has been something that I've written in about the past. I know other fans have written in to say, hey, why don't we just change it up? Why don't we flip it and make it an all-female panel for once, or make it an annual thing? And for it to be done on just this one day, it's great that it happened, but at the same time, I feel kind of cheated by it too.
I'm not going to go that far, but my main man, Kristian Harloff, he gave up 2 movie talks per month to accommodate more Perry appearances, so I'm sure he wouldn't mind being on less if it meant more reps for the women at Collider, including Ashley, Wendy, and Natasha Alexis _. Kristian's got plenty of Schmoedown and Jedi Council tasks to keep him busy for the next lifetime. Plus Ashley, Sinead, Wendy, Natasha, they've been listening to these guys do this show for so long that I'm sure they could pick it up rather quickly.
Yeah, especially when they opened the door by throwing to Ashley and Wendy on the panel when they would ask them what their thoughts about a particular topic. So the door has already been opened. I don't know if that's maybe a test for down the road. It could be, but I don't see why not after we've already seen their perspectives, and it's good perspective. They get to see about as much stuff around the office and the news. They're all integrated into that as well. So of course they would have their own opinions on it and their own spins, and everybody's got different backgrounds. So yeah, I would like to see that more often.
I think giving the host a chance to comment was in response to a snarky comment that a former host made on another show. However, people forget how many talented women John Campea has introduced YouTube to, whether it's Roth Cornett, Clark Wolf, Alicia Malone, Miri Jetikin, Amy Rose, and eventually Ashley, Sinead, and Wendy. I'm not saying he gave them all their first jobs, but they became household names from being on AMC and for being talented. And the thing about hiring talent is that they become very difficult to keep. John helped Roth get her former job at IGN because he knew she had outgrown her position alongside him at AMC. And much like Ken Napzok, John hires talent that is versatile. A lot of people started out in a behind-the-scenes role, only to have it evolve into an on-camera role, such as Wendy.
I just want to go back to one more thing about Clark in particular. With Nightmares now being once a month, I want to see more of Clark. She's not having to weekly produce and go over show notes of Nightmares anymore. It's a monthly thing. So I feel like we need more of her. And we've heard in the past, Kristian has said it, Campy has said it, of how important she is to Collider. Show me that. I want to see more Clark Wolf. More Clark Wolf, the better.
I agree. I've been saying the last couple of weeks that it makes sense to have Clark hosting Friday's Movie Talk since she's on the air 3 times less per month. And that's not a slight towards Dennis, as his career is in production while Clark's is in hosting. Furthermore, I'm terrified by this Clark-Riley singles match in the Schmoedown because Clark told me in my interview with her last month that she'd likely take a break from singles upon her next loss. So Friday's Movie Talk is almost a necessity at this point. Lastly, on this week's Collider Behind the Scenes and Bloopers, they gave another proper introduction to Grace Hancock. This was a suggestion I made several weeks ago since she was popping up in these episodes without being introduced to most of the audience. This was the same week where I also suggested that they do the Office Pet Peeves idea and the Arrival spoof with Grace and Schnepp. Obviously, they ended up going with the La La Land spoof instead. But ever since my comment many weeks ago, they've been going out of their way to give Grace a proper introduction. So I think they are moving her from behind the scenes to in front of the scenes like we discussed earlier. Well, Aaron, this is our 5th episode working together and our 2nd episode this week. I just want to say how much I've enjoyed working with you. So why don't you plug away?
You can find me every Saturday on the SK Plus channel hosting the Schmoedown Rundown. This week, we had Eliot Dewberry on for an interview, and we had yourself, Brian Davids, on as a special guest panelist. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys all check that out. And otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at ATTitanium as always.
And you guys can follow me, Brian Davids, on Twitter at BDF331. Check out my TV film podcast at filmschlubspodcast.com or wherever podcasts are found. We do a lot of coverage for Better Call Saul, The Leftovers, Fargo. We talk to showrunners, writers, actors, producers, directors, you name it. So if you're into those shows, come check us out. And I also want to thank Kristian Harloff, Mark Ellis, John Campea, Mark Fernandez for all the support they provided me in this show the last 7 or 8 months. Robert Butler III deserves extra recognition as always, as he uploads all of our videos to YouTube and promotes our show every single week. I've got to thank Cody Hall as he uploads our MP3 to iTunes every single week as well. I still can't believe that I guested on Schmoeville After Show number 20, and I'm still here 30 episodes later. As a fan of Schmoes Know since its earliest days at Toad Hop, I just cannot believe the opportunity that I've been given to host an official after show for a show that I love. I'm proud of the fact that our show has always been above the line. It's always provided real feedback that our favorite YouTubers can actually apply. When I hear people say that they enjoy the Schmoes Know Show even more because of our show, that's the ultimate compliment. That means I've done my job, and I'm grateful that I'll always be a small part of the Schmoes Know Show lore. And last but not least, thank you to everyone who listens to this show. Thank you to everyone who has ever listened to this show. You have no idea how much your support has meant to all of us. Well, until next time, I'm Brian Davids.
And I'm Aaron Turner.
And you're welcome for the ratings.